Okay, and welcome back to another episode of A Dose of Reality.
Yep. It's good to be here. It's good to be back.
Today we're getting into religious debate. That is the topic I have for today. And I'm going to pose a question. Is there any point to religious debate or any benefit? Because over the years, we've seen various debates. It's a whole arena, debating arena.
It is.
And for a while, it felt like it did have its place and, garnered interest. But in this day and time, is there still any point to it?
It's a good question. I mean, I suppose it depends on the context of the question or the context of the debate. Because I've seen, there's a lot of different types of religious debates, so to speak, if that makes sense. You could have a religious person versus a religious person, like a Muslim versus a Christian, or a Jew versus a Muslim, so on and so forth. Most of those types of debates I've seen are pointless, to be honest. They don't go anywhere, and we can get onto that. You could also have a religious person versus a atheist of some kind, because apparently there's different types of atheists out there.
Yeah, I don't even know what's going on in that arena.
There's a whole world. And so often you can have that debate where, and there are different types, because sometimes you might call someone an atheist and they might say, well, that's not quite right. I'm more this, which means this precisely. And so you might have that debate, which is interesting as well. I've seen a lot of that. I don't know why YouTube, the algorithm right now is like, you need to.
The algorithm knows what you want.
Yeah, I guess some comedy, because it is funny. I'll get onto that. It is funny. So it's like, some laughter in your life. And then you might have a religious person versus someone who might describe themselves as more of a spiritual person in some way, or more of a cultural person in some way. Someone who, whilst they point out the many flaws within religion, still acknowledge the existence of a world beyond the physical, if that makes sense. Whether it's a reality beyond the physical, like the spiritual or the mental realm, whether it's a force, a creative force that exists beyond the physical, or a nature, so on and so forth. They acknowledge this, and they're spiritual in their ways. There's different branches, obviously, of this group, but they are not religious in that sense. And that might be the category that we fall more into as Sabaeans, I guess. So, I honestly, most of the time in this day and time as Sabaeans, like I say, we're taught more that it's a day and time of teaching, as opposed to preaching or debating, if that makes sense. So the answer often lies in the context of the debate. I would never dismiss a debate, so to speak, but often they lack purpose, because often debates are really more about entertainment or getting eyes upon a particular person or people in order to generate money, to be honest, from what you see. Which to me is, like I said, I've seen a lot of the religious people versus the atheists lately. And it's an interesting one, because every single one I've seen, the atheist absolutely wipes the floor clean with the religious person, usually a Christian, occasionally a Muslim, but usually a Christian. And the atheist, the floor is clean. It's just scrubs. And I'm just like, the primary reason for that, and it can be frustrating. Well, not really frustrating, to be honest. It's funny. But the primary reason for that is because religious people, mainly Christians, are delusional. I don't know. I don't know what else to say. They're delusional. Because they often begin their arguments or build their case from a place that is so easy to pick up, from a crazy place. Like, oh, there's a dude in the sky who's everywhere, who's all knowing, all powerful, and he'll take care of me and us. You just got to believe in him. The place that you start from lacks such logic that the atheist, who's usually someone who's maybe into their science, usually someone who often is someone who's actually studied the Bible more than the religious person has. And then picks out quotes like, well, what does it mean there? What does it mean there? It's things that you can't possibly justify. You go through the Bible, you can find plenty of quotes that you can't possibly justify in the context of what we today on the whole would see as morality. You won't be able to. And that's what I was saying, because I saw where there was someone said, I can't remember, we've had some responses on some of our videos with the religious talk, and obviously people feel like sometimes we go in on the religions, and particularly Christianity. And I'd be like, no, we haven't even begun.
No,
we haven't begun to go in on anything.
We really haven't.
We don't.
You haven't even hit them with some of the quotes in there.
Even hit them with some of the quotes.
Very questionable.
Very questionable quotes. Very questionable things going on in that Bible. And the Old Testament that a lot of Christians tried to just shift to the side now. Like, well, don't worry about all that. There's some things going on in there, right? And we're kind. Even to the Jehovah's Witnesses that come round, we're kind, because we're like, nah, I'm not gonna smack you with all of that. But hey, let's look at this piece of basic logic. And so often the Christians, they lose the debate heavily, because the atheist will just pick apart their argument or come up with questions, or well, it says this in the Bible. What's going on here? Is there slaves in the Bible? Why is God killing so many people? Just simple facts that when you look at the Old Testament, it's always funny. We mentioned this once before as well. How when you measure it up, God has got a higher kill count than the devil. Way higher. It's not close. It's not close. His kill count is 2 million % higher.
I don't know if the devil killed anybody.
I don't know, man. He'd be lucky if he was touching double figures. God, on the other hand, it was in the millions. Well into them. He was
trigger happy.
He was kapow, you're dead. Kapow, kapow. This whole nation's dead. So, so when you look at it from that point, the atheist has a lot of ammo, right? Be like, you know what? And that's because you're starting from this religious context, right? Mm-hmm. This book, this place that lacks logic, and that lacks scientific backing. So it's very easy for an atheist, if you're basing your argument on that book, to pick you apart and to come with simple logical questions or statements that's just gonna pick you apart. So don't take my word for it. Just go on YouTube and check out some stuff if you want to. You'll see atheists having the time of their lives against these religious people. And so the frustration, if that's the word, because obviously it's not really frustration in that sense, but the frustration comes in because I look at it like, well, as a religious person, you could still your argument doesn't have to start from a crazy place with this dude in the clouds who's everywhere and who takes care of us, who doesn't really respond. There's a lot of evil going on in the world, doesn't really deal with it, but he is all loving, all knowing, all powerful. It doesn't have to start from that place. You can start from okay, what am I feeling here? That there is something beyond this world. So we always start from a scientific place. We look at it and say, well, okay, this physical world is comprised of atoms. Can we go beneath the atom? The atom, named so incorrectly by the Greeks, right? Mm-hmm. Atom, atomos, means indivisible. They've divided the atom. They've gone beneath the atom, right?
They divided the hell out of the atom.
Yeah, they've gone beneath it, right? So from that context, we start to, okay, so can let's go beneath the immediate subatomic particles that we know of, the protons, neutrons, and electrons. Let's start dealing with quarks and biaps and zeeds. And how far can we go, and do we reach particles which don't have any physical weight? Because then we can start, okay, there is something that we can't weigh, that doesn't amount to anything physically, but it's responsible for creating something physical. Start from a place where we can, okay, let's dive into that.
I think you just gave the Christians some ammo.
Yeah,
for
they
can
take notes like
atoms.
Yeah, atoms. Let's look into atoms. Start from that place. Start from a place of science. We've dealt with it. Retu was speaking the other day about the idea of the double slit experiment and how you have particles which do not obey the physical laws. So if the particles, if you have established physical laws, if you've established a whole branch of science called physics, and then you have particles which disobey those laws, what world do they belong to? Right? So again, search it up. Particles disobeying what's established as the laws of physics. These types of things, we deal with the fact that the first law of thermal dynamics, right? Energy can neither be created nor destroyed, right? Okay, so if we exist, does that not also mean we have always existed in some form and will always exist in some form? If we are energy. So arguments that can have some sort of logical basis, where now we can talk about it. Now we might be able to learn from each other. When you ask the question, is there any point to religious debate? Most often not, because there's nothing to learn. You just hear a bunch of drivel from these religious people. about how you just have to believe. We spoke about this in one of our first segments, how faith and belief. Faith makes you lazy. It makes you lazy. I'm not saying all religious people are lazy.
No, some of them, are dedicated. They've studied hard.
Yeah,
at it.
Some of them.
Some of them.
Very few of the ones I've spoken to.
Yeah, very few we've met.
But
I will say, if you're going to dedicate your life to something, you should be able to defend it. We should at least know it.
You should know it. You should know it. And that's the problem that we've always cited with a lot of people within religion. They don't even know the book. And most of the people that we speak to in this area, Jehovah's Witnesses or any other types of preachers that are coming and trying and attempting to convert you, do not know the book at all. Not at all. They come with a specific quote, a specific question.
Once you go outside those guidelines,
they start scratching their head.
Well,
pulling their hair out like, whoa, it's retreating immediately. I didn't know you was going to say all that. So immediately. So yeah, you would think that, okay, if you decide, like we've said so many times, if you decide, oh, hey, yeah, I'm following this, you're going to know it. You're going to know what you're talking about. You're going to have read the book from front to back, ideally in its original language. And you're going to have a complete understanding and understanding of it, so that when somebody asks you a question, I'm not saying have it all down to memory or this, but you have an understanding within yourself that yeah, I've done my research. This makes sense. I'm living this way of life. Right. But like I said, faith makes you lazy, because then even in these debates, you don't have to put any effort into your argument. If you can just say, hey, I believe, then what do you need to have any logic for? What do you need to do any research for? What do you need to check things out for? What do you need to learn science for? You don't need to do any of that, because you just say, I have faith and belief in this. And regardless of whether the evidence points against that, this is what I believe. And that's why faith has been so dangerous, and the programming of the masses has been so damaging to us, because it just robs you of any type of natural intellect when you're dealing with the topic. So yeah, with that being said, the question is an interesting question. I think there are debates where you go into it and you're like, this might serve a purpose, because I might go into a conversation or a debate, and that's one thing to note. Sometimes things are just conversations, and conversations are fine. But I might go into a conversation or debate knowing full well that I'm not really going to convince this person of my viewpoint, and they might know full well that they're not going to convince me of theirs. I might have my own perspective on it. I might be, you're not going to convince me because you're talking nonsense. But we might have that understanding. But who's watching? Sometimes someone's watching and you say something and they might not be a part of the debate, but because of what you said, they go and research something, they go and check something out.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking about. Exactly that. That is a benefit we've seen, because we know the debate culture is big on, say, YouTube.
Right.
Sometimes people are looking for answers and they come across those videos,
exactly.
And that leads them down a path to find knowledge they needed. So can have its benefit in that way.
It can definitely have its benefits. So yeah, you might find someone who says something that triggers the explosion in your DNA, and so I wouldn't dismiss the purpose to them, but on just the base level, I think most debates they lack purpose, or a lot of debates in this context, in this religious context, lack purpose, because most often it's just a side against a side, and most of the people watching are on one side or the other. And if you go on YouTube, you see the comments, all the religious people will come and say, the balance of the comments often depends on the channel that it's on, right? So if it's a religious channel, most of the comments are going to come on defending the religious person or the religious side of the debate or supporting them. And if it's on a atheist channel or a conscious channel or whatever, most of the people will come on. And so sides aren't really being changed. Minds aren't. Yeah, I suppose you could be touching someone who's not commenting, who's just, oh, okay, that's interesting.
But within the arena itself, there's no growth. There's no growth.
And that's the point I'm making. And so there's certain times where I just be like, well, why are you debating? For example, I'll put it to you like this. If I see an Arab Muslim debating a European Christian, I'm like, what are you two doing? That makes no sense at all. You come from different places. You have a different way of life. Just live your way of life. So when if I'm approached by a European Christian, I don't try and, because I'm just like, Christianity's for you, right? We can trace it back and we can, that's for you guys. There's some obvious flaws in it, but it served its purpose for your people, right? Or it serves its purpose for your people. So there's no benefit to me saying, oh, But as Africans, we predate that religion. Well, you're a European, right? So I'm not going to, it's not like I'm going to withhold knowledge, but I'm not going to go into it with you like, because if I see one of my own people in doubt, you might have that natural inclination to, I need to try and wake this person up. But if it's a European Christian, I'm just like, well, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing pretty much, So I think there's also that context to it. I wouldn't try and do that any more than I would try and go to a Hindu and say, listen, you need to come out of your Hindu religion. No, that's your religion. That's where you belong. Any more than you would go to China and tell someone to stop speaking Chinese. And, you wouldn't do that because that's their language. That's their way of life. And when you associate religions, cultures with your way of life and your entire identity, you understand that there's little purpose in going to a different part of the world where a way of life is established, and it's at their root as a people, and trying to pull them away. It actually brings me on to another story. Actually, I spoke to a
story time.
Our people.
What happened?
Our people kind of lost, They're kind of lost.
Talk to me. What happened?
Our people are kind of lost. I was speaking to a black woman, actually, someone of African descent. I think she was heritage-wise. She was from, I think it was Ghana or Nigeria. I can't remember. This is quite a few weeks ago now. Ghana or Nigeria, and so we were speaking, and she was beautiful as well. This is what I'm saying, Nefrutat. She was a Christian. I considered it. I glanced up like...
You considered...
Praise the Lord.
Being up and down Sunday, praising white Jesus.
Yeah, I thought about it for a moment.
Won't he do it?
Yeah. Because I was like, But then one of my ancestors came down like, what you doing? I was like, nah, I'm sorry. Saving souls, that's what we do.
A nice face will make you reconsider everything.
You reconsider everything. It's like, so she, at first, we weren't even talking about that, but eventually she made it known that she was a Christian, and she asked if I believed, and I sighed, maybe internally, I can't remember if externally, I sighed. I was like, nah, I'm not a Christian. I don't believe in the God that you believe in. And she was like, why not? And then I thought about it. I'd be tired sometimes. Sometimes I'm tempted to just be like, yeah, I believe, just to end the conversation. But I was like, okay, let me explain it. Again, when I see one of my people within the religion, I feel compelled to at least give them a glimpse of the truth, so to speak. So we spoke, I made a few points. I can't remember the order in which I made them, but I spoke about the fact that we predate the religion. So the idea that a religion that's 6,000 years old, at most, is responsible for us, or is our way of life when we've existed for a lot longer than that. It makes it seem as though God is hetero-racist, and we was down here for ages. He was like, I don't care. And then he looked down and he saw white people and he was like, you know what? Let me give them a way to connect with me. That, and I was like, I can't get behind that. She was like, absolutely, 100% I agree. I was like, I was like, there are things in the Bible that don't make sense. We went over particular quotes. I was like, I can't get on board with that. Morally, it doesn't agree with me. She's like, yeah, 100% I agree. I was like, I was like, this idea that Christians perpetuate that this God figure is all good, not responsible for evil, but at the same time is all powerful and omnipresent and created everything, but the devil's responsible for the bad things, doesn't add up to me, because wouldn't God have created the devil? The same argument that we always make. And if he's all knowing, wouldn't he have, even if we created an angel that became the devil, wouldn't he have known that angel was going to become the devil because he is all knowing, etc., etc. 100%, I agree completely with what you're saying. I was like, okay, job done, right? Like, okay, so what we did, there were some other points made, and every point I made she agreed fundamentally with. And then I said, okay, so what are you doing then? She was like, what? She was like, well, because I've been blessed to feel the whole Holy Spirit within me, I understand that this is the right place to be. And I was like, what are we doing here then? There's no point. If I can structure my argument beautifully, if I may say so myself.
You may.
It was a beautiful structure. I just kapow, kind. Didn't go all the way in, didn't pull out some of the more harsher quotes or more of the harsher realities of the book. Didn't even, I think I even compared it to older scriptures that I did do. You know, pointed out some of the blatant similarities between this book and I just went to Sumerian culture. That's as far back as I went. I didn't go beyond that to Africa. I said, but you can even see the similarities between this book and Sumerian culture. I might have mentioned Hadar or Horus in Greek tones and the comparisons between that particular character or that particular being and Jesus, that particular character. Everything was agreed with, but the Holy Spirit had got to her, apparently. And because she could feel the Holy Spirit, there was no point to the beautiful structure of my argument.
I want to know what the Holy Spirit is.
Do you?
It sounds like a parasite.
Yeah.
Like that thing in Legion.
Yeah, Legion.
If anyone watched that show.
Legion season 1. Well, all 3 seasons actually were special, but Legion season 1. Yeah, you had something latched onto. I don't want to spoil it. But then again, it's been out for a few years now.
Yeah, if you ain't seen it, that's on you.
That's on you. The parasite. This Holy Spirit is doing something, but it ain't saving you. It ain't saving you. I was concerned, in fact, even just the way it was termed, I can feel the Holy Spirit within me and it's doing this and doing that. I was like, oh, that don't sound good. I was like, is this voluntary?
Did you consent to this?
Yeah, did you consent? If it just happened, then I don't know what. So I'm there like, wow. So it really didn't matter what I had to say. Not even in the context of disagreeing. It's not even because sometimes you talk to someone and they just they find ways to disagree, and we know why that is often is because they just don't want to believe that their beliefs could be so wrong, right? They don't want to acknowledge that their beliefs could be so wrong. So you get that feeling inside you where your whole world is falling apart at that very idea that your entire way of life may be based on lies, may be based on deception, and which is why we're often so kind with how we deliver the knowledge when we're talking about religion, and it's still always respectful. If you catch me in any conversation with any religious person, you're going to see I'm extremely respectful, no matter what comes at me, no matter what type of drivel comes at me. It's still always respectful, still always patient, because you are attempting, when you go into a debate with a Christian, unless you're dealing with a fraud who's simply using the doctrine that they're in to exploit people in some way, then you are going into it to potentially shake someone's whole world, right? Their whole belief system. You're gonna, this is crazy. And so we're always delicate with how we deliver that knowledge, which is why we don't dive into some of the harsher quotes, right?
We don't whip the book open. Like, look, they was eating people.
Yeah, we don't do that. But we can do that.
We could.
Because they was eating people, right?
They was.
Children was getting ate up. We can go into that.
That's another episode.
We can go into that. Point is, we don't whip out some of those harsher quotes, right? We just try to use some basic knowledge to try and unlock the mind and get them thinking in a particular way and start to question things and start to question this idea that you're just supposed to have this blind faith in something that not only hasn't been proven correct, but has also been proven wrong in many places. Because sometimes you find that middle ground where people just be like, well, we don't know that it's this, we don't know that it's that, but there's many things when you're dealing with religion that have been proven incorrect.
Especially for someone of African descent.
Exactly.
It's been proven not for you and your people.
Yeah, it's been proven. It's been proven. And so for someone to acknowledge that no God would have left us unguided for so long and then just blessed us with Christianity 6,000 years ago, which is relatively recent as compared to the time that we've existed. Acknowledging that, but still believing. So I'm just like, that's when I just like, what's the point? What's the point? There is no point to the discussion. So I was
that kind of cycles back round. Yeah. What's the point?
What's the point?
Is there any point?
Is there any point? So often I'm just left questioning whether there's any point to it. I still always will continue to try, but you're dealing with a level of programming and then ultimate delusion that's difficult to get around, if that makes sense. So after that conversation, I was a little bit crestfallen. I was just like, well, she agreed with everything I said, but nothing's changed. Nothing's changed as a result of that. Who knows? Sometimes people, many, weeks or months or years later, they're like, you know what?
Yeah, you never know what you've left someone with.
You know what? Yeah.
Do say to people.
Yeah. So in that sense, I'm like, I wouldn't give in. I wouldn't give up. But yeah, I think it's a case of, you have to pick your moments. There are many contexts where there's no point to religious debate. And I've seen so many back and forths over little quotes here and there. I'm just like, but ultimately, what are we doing here? The religious debates that, like I said, are most pointless that I've seen personally are where it's two different religions, where it's Muslim debating a Christian. And I'm just like, what are you guys doing here? I don't understand. Where do we go? You're an Arab. You're European. Just live your lives. And then you understand that the debate world is a little bit more than, it's not really authentic in that sense, where you're actually trying to convince something of someone or something that you think they need to know.
Yeah, well, that was my next point, because that's something we speak about. So let's get into that. The exploiters and ego trippers of the debate world.
Yeah. You find those of all religions, cultures, doctrines. There are many, many, many people who have used Baba Yanun's doctrine to exploit and ego trip money. And to make money, or to find wives, if that makes sense. So that is a reality of our world, a particular branch of human nature, whereby there are people out there who exploit. And when you're doing it by way of religion, I just think it's the worst thing, especially because most people a lot of people that I've seen exploit when it comes to religion, they know the truth. They've actually studied. They know the truth. They know the Bible inside and out. They might even know the Quran inside and out. They might know the Torah inside and out. Then they've gone on to read other books. They've studied. And they've reached a conclusion that I can live my life most comfortably right here in this space. And then it's one thing living yourself in that space, knowing the truth. But then I'm going to mislead others to this same space when I know the truth. So if you're an exploiter, yeah, boy, shame on you. Shame on you. If you're an exploiter of any kind.
Take a long, good look in the mirror.
Look in the mirror.
Reflect.
You have to reflect. And like I said, I've seen those of all doctrines. Obviously, Baba Yanun's doctrine is very powerful. And Baba Yanun has walked us through the different schools of religion. So he's gone through all the different schools, pointed out the various flaws and so on and so forth. Answered all our questions about each religion, taken us through a school where we've almost lived that particular way of life. And then we've graduated out of it. So if you're a student of Baba Yanun, student of the master teacher, then you, and a good student in the sense that you're studious, you've done you've paid attention in the lectures, you've done your due diligence, you've read all your books and so on and so forth. You are a potential danger. You then have to choose. Like you always say, duality. You're going to be a god or you're going to be a devil. You then have to choose, right? Because you have knowledge that you can use to control people. And there's a lot of people looking for the truth or looking for something. And you can exploit those people. When someone's looking for something, they can be exploited. It's one of the reasons that Baba Yanun explains you should never have false hope. You should never have hope, even faith, because it means you're hoping for something, and there are beings, both human and otherwise, that can exploit that search. Okay? And that's what happens. You see a lot of people getting exploited in that way. They're just looking for something. They're just looking for the truth, or they might care about their people. They're trying to save their people. And these beings will put themselves in certain positions whereby they can exploit you, whereby they can cheat you. And so you have a lot of, and I want to get into this topic as well, you have a lot of what you might term as anti-warners as well. And where Baba Yanun explained, he is a warner, right? He is the warner of this time. He's come to warn his people. But such is the essence of reality, whereby it is dual all the time. Duality is a reality. As soon as you send something of a particular frequency, the opposite frequency is usually not far behind. And so if you have warners, you will also have anti-warners, if that makes sense.
That Nupu and Zupu. That
Nupu and Zupu. Exactly. Factor. And these are realities. That Christ, that Antichrist, right? And so you have a lot of different people popping up. The rate at which they pop up, it amazes
it's like
me.
They're spawning.
Yeah, who's planting these seeds? Because these guys are just growing fields of these guys, just turning up like, yeah, you know what? I'm the savior. I got all the answers. I'm just like, no, you don't. But they're convincing, or they can be. I look at it like I'm not convinced, but they convince some people. And so these what you might term as anti-warners, but I want to get into the actual warner, anti-warner doctrine, because there is a specific doctrine, but you might term these people as anti-warners who pop up like, yeah, I've read this, I've done that. You know what? It's time to mislead people, and they will succeed, especially in this day and time with such an over influx of information and information. A lot of people are being misled, even people who might be looking for the truth, which there are many of in this day and time, looking for, okay, but where? Clearly this isn't it. Clearly what we've been given in this last age of existence isn't it. But where is it? And these people pop up and exploit them. And that's the danger that I would warn many people about. So just do your reading. A lot of people just have the charisma. They come on and say something and it sounds heavy. And you're like, you know what, this guy, he's talking some real facts. Yeah, I'm going to follow him. And you see these people gathering legions of followers. And I'm not saying every person that gathers followers is somehow an exploiter. Some people have real missions, real good things in their heart.
Some people are genuine. But you can see the signs.
Yeah.
The ones who are not.
Always.
First sign is usually if they're asking you for some money for something.
It's one of the signs. It's not an absolute. Because again, you need money to get things done. But yeah, if they're asking for money, they're not asking for money. Again, you have to ask the question. And yeah, a lot of people get followed and they really haven't done anything. I'm just like, how has this person gained such a following?
I should say if that money benefits them and them alone.
Yeah,
it's a big tell.
Exactly. If they're asking for money and the money benefits them and them alone, then then at that point you're like, hey, hang on a second here. You know, if they're trying to generate something for their community, then you have to look at it and say, you know what, maybe this person is trying to do good. Because I don't want to, there are people out there who are trying to do good, who you don't want to dismiss, you don't want to just write off.
Because naturally we're going to need money to build as a community. So you don't put everyone into that category. But, that teamed with a few other signs. And, you'll see.
Yeah, exactly. And you'll see and you'll find out. And it won't be nice when you do. So I would watch out for those. There are many of them. Hopefully I want to get into the Warner, anti-Warner doctrine, but hopefully we can start to see, because we have to start to see. There's so many of them, and sometimes it shocks me. I see them pop up and I see it immediately. Nah, this ain't.
Ain't it.
And a couple of weeks later, that person's marching with thousands, hundreds of, not literally marching, but I've got hundreds of thousands of people following them, and I'm like, this person? But it was obvious, but apparently not. So
some of them aren't even that intelligent to me. Don't even have that charisma that they usually have. Some of them I genuinely don't get it.
So I'd be scratching my head like, really? This the one you went for? But they exist. And so we acknowledge that they exist, but I wouldn't attribute that to religion purely. They are in religion, but that's just everywhere.
Exactly. We framed this topic today within religion, but we do need to get into even experiences within the conscious community or surrounding our Sabine teachers, that whole arena.
Yeah, and that's facts. That's facts, because even with our teachings or any other so-called conscious teachings, you can see people engaging in debates that are pointless. It's one of the reasons that Baba Yanun at one stage just said, yeah, listen, or one of my good brothers, actually, to quote one of my brothers from the States, there is no debate. Kill them with culture. There is no debate. And so Baba Yanun at one stage was like, listen, I've done it. I've done the work.
Yeah.
I've exposed all the flaws in all these religions. Now it's just up to whether people want to acknowledge it or not. Now let's just teach.
Yeah, just put the information out there, make it accessible for people.
Exactly.
And they decide.
As he also has a book called The Decision. You decide. At the end of the day, sometimes you have to decide, and it's like you just got to leave people to make their decisions. There are consequences to every decision we make. There is always a result to every step, to every choice we make. And so from that perspective, it's just like, well, yeah, there should be less debates for sure. I'm not going to dismiss every debate just forget. Sometimes you go into a discussion with someone and you might end up debating a point. That's fine. But religious debates in general, conscious debates, a lot of the ones I see, even some people that will take from our teachings and use it, even within our world, I'm just like, no, there's not much point to this. Clearly, this is a situation where, yeah, you're trying to gather a following, gather views, gather money, which I'm not saying there's something inherently wrong with that. But then it's once you're doing that, the debate itself or the content of the debate can lack authenticity. Where are you actually trying to help, or are you just trying to say things in a particular way to sound heavy in order to generate attention. And that's what the internet is. It's all about attention. It's all about attention. That's what the world's become. And so, yeah, no one gets a let off there. That's within religion. That's outside of religion. That's anyone who has any piece of knowledge or so-called knowledge, so-called doctrine, so-called information, and they want to try and use it in a particular way. Do you teach it from a genuine place? Or do you say, yeah?
Well, they never give the credit. So
yeah, well, that's another tell, isn't it?
That's another tell, isn't it?
If you're not going to give the credit for where you got... This is the thing about the conscious community. A lot of it was fueled by Baba Yanun.
That's just facts.
It's just facts. You can trace back a lot of what is taught in some shape or way or form to his teachings. And so if you're teaching of it and you're, one, not acknowledging it, or even worse, going against him, whilst teaching his knowledge, and I'm just like,
people really be doing that.
Yeah.
They'll be teaching his knowledge while simultaneously going against him.
Simultaneously slandering. It's like they'll look you in the eye. That's what I'm saying. These beings are different. They'll look you in the eye like I'm looking you in the eye right now.
They're built different.
Yeah, it's just a different type of build. Me, I would get flustered. At some point, you catch me looking down if I was doing it, looking away. Like I can't look you in the eye and lie to you like this. But these beings will look you in the eye and just go at it. But yeah, to cycle back to a point I made earlier as to why most Christians are delusional. Not all, I'm just saying most.
Yeah, you came for them.
I mean, did I yet though? Have I? I mean, you know what we've spoken about.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't think I've come for them yet. And that's not really in the plans, to be honest. But yeah, to go back to why I used that word as well is that going back to the Christian woman who I was having a conversation with. And by the way, it was a nicely toned conversation. There was no animosity from either side. The conversation was in good spirits and began and ended well. And it was like, yeah, okay, you take care, you live your life and cool. So it was fine. But one of the points she made, one of the questions I asked was, okay, so from your perspective, is this religion that you're a part of the only way, the only path to what you might call God, the higher power, to what you might call salvation, whatever the ultimate goal is this the only path? And she's like, yes, absolutely it is. Remembering, she agreed with every point before that I had made. But anyway, she said, yes, absolutely it is. And I said, well, okay, but most people on the planet, the religion that they're partaking in, and we've spoken about this before, again, the religion that they're partaking in is they're partaking in it as a result of where they live on the planet, really. That is the major deciding factor in the religion you're practicing. Where you were born, okay? What your society is made up of, the family you was born into, so on and so forth. Of course, you will have situations where somebody, grows up and decides, you know what? Forget this God. I'm going to go with that God. Of course, you have those situations. But most of the time, if you go around the planet, you'll see, well, in this particular region, this is a Muslim country. And so most people here practice Islam. This is a Christian country. So most people here practice Christianity and so on and so forth. This is a Hindu country. So most people here practice Hinduism. And so with that being said, with that being one of the major decided factors in the religion of your choice, because the question I followed up with that. So what happens if you don't accept Jesus Christ as your savior? She didn't want to say it, but ultimately you're condemned. You're going straight to hell, is what she was saying. You're going straight to hell.
That's what she said,
yeah. As soon as you cross over. It took a while, because I was like, what happens? She's like, well, I was like, yeah, but what happens? I don't want to... What happens? You could go into hell. Eventually it came out. And so that means as soon as you cross over, the devil's right there waiting for you. Like, yeah, you didn't accept Jesus. So here I am. And so with that being said, I was like, okay, so then there's a whole bunch of people on the planet being condemned by way of where they were born.
Yeah.
Which surely can't be right. And it's, God will inspire his people to go and spread it. And it's like, nah, stop, come on. We know overwhelmingly the people in that part of the planet are not going to change. They're not going to change. So you're condemning a large group of people based simply, you was born there. The person who was born here gets an advantage because you're more likely to find Jesus. The person born over there, you are a lot less likely, depending where you are, to find Jesus. Unless Jesus is brought to you by way of violence, torture, and enslavement, you are a lot less likely to find Jesus. And as a God, I'm going to look down upon that and condemn that group of people over there. This is what I'm saying. It's like follow the argument through. It's not logical. It lacks foundation, but they'll go with that and say, oh yeah, this is the one and only way. Thereby creating the fear with which most religions are based upon anyways. It's based on a fear. That's the core emotion of religion. A fear of what's going to happen to you usually, of what's going to happen to you in the afterlife, of something which you can't, certainly within that doctrine, know. Because those same religions that are controlling you with that fear don't really teach you about the afterlife. There's some vague and faint things in there, like, yeah, you eternally with my guy in the clouds, angels singing happiness, or devil's torturing you forever. It's you know, I need more.
Yeah, need more.
I need more.
Can we talk about Jesus for a hot second now?
We can talk about Jesus.
Because he a deadbeat dad. I said it. Where's the dude at? Because
that dude went to the store to get milk,
cigarettes, milk.
Just never came back. I don't know what to say. Listen, I don't know what to say. Jesus isn't coming back. I don't know what to say at this point. He isn't coming back. Was he ever here?
Yeah, there's a lot. It's a lot going on.
It's a lot going on.
It'd be nice if he showed his face.
And he does need to pop down like, oh, snap, things are kind of bad. Let me save some people. I'm a savior. No, he's the guy. He's not coming back. Listen, deadbeat dad. Yeah, he promised his children he would return. So
he said, I'm going to go to the store and I'll be right back.
And he never came back. And that was the last you saw of him. And now you're here asking, when's Jesus coming back? And yeah, the character itself, there's so many places we can go with it. The bottom line is he's not coming back, okay? Did he ever exist?
Should we have an episode bashing Jesus? Like the women bashing podcasts?
Yeah, like the women. I want to get on the women bashing podcast. I've seen a lot of podcasts bashing women. And we got to
address that.
We got to balance that out. We got to address that. I don't know. Yeah, I don't even want to get onto that. He's trying to distract me. I see. He's just throwing random topics. You know, I'm going to go on rants. No, trying to distract me. If you want to bash Jesus, you go for it. I'll be right here with you. I
thought you would be leading the cause.
Listen, I'm tired, man. Jesus has come. You know what? Jesus has got a lot to answer for because primarily as well, he's coming between a lot of relationships as well. You as soon as you get started with a lot of women, especially in this country, that's the first thing. Listen, they're
like, my first love is Jesus. It's like, well,
so you come after that?
Even the kids gonna come after
the kids that? Come after Jesus? So there's some next dude in my house getting the affection of my wife before me and my children. I can't live like that. So immediately it's like, forget it. But it's wild, and they're dead serious about it. They're like, nah. You see a lot, and that's how the mentality in this of a lot of people in this, a section of people in this country. It's like, well, if you ain't got Jesus in your heart, then we can't do nothing. And it's like, damn, man. So Jesus out here, he's the primary focus of the relationship. What? I'm just an addition at that point, a third wheel. That can't be. That doesn't sound like what a relationship's supposed to be, to me. But that's what's happening. And so Jesus has got a lot to answer for. He needs to come back and just declare himself out of all relationships. That's the first thing. I don't want to be a part of that. That's between you and your husband. And then he needs to come back for starters.
Yeah.
And that would be nice. But we know it's not going to happen. The religions obviously aren't based on fact. And there's so many layers to the Jesus. That's why when I say, did he ever exist? He did not exist in the form that he's presented by a lot of these religions. But the character or the idea of a Christ figure or someone who comes to save a particular group of people or comes to help, the idea goes back through religions and cultures that come before Christianity. And it's a reoccurring one. And there is a level of truth to it, or a level of reality to when you deal with the story in its real form, not in this religion like, well, Savior comes down form. Like Rector's always saying, there were many crucifixions before the crucifixion of Christianity. So the story reoccurs, and there's a purpose to the story. There certainly is a purpose to the story. So if anyone's gonna look into that concept, I would advise you to look into Hadar, as we say in our tones, or Horus, as it's said in Greek tones, and that whole story. Or you can watch The Lion King, because that kind of just yeah, The Lion King is the story basically. The Lion King was copy paste from that Egyptian story. So you had with Simba being obviously that Horus or Hadar figure if that makes sense. And Scar would be your Satak or Set in Greek tones. Mufasa would be your Asar or Asidus in Greek tones, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, exactly.
So
watch the animated one now. So we don't speak about the live action one.
That new one wasn't doing it. It was a disappointment. It was a real disappointment. But yeah, so what I'm saying is, I mean, coming back to the original question, obviously, is there any point to religious debate? I would say in a lot of cases, no. They're going to find a lot of situations where you're going to speak to someone and you cannot reach them. You cannot reach them. The programming is too deep. The faith is too deep, too strong. The genetic programming, remember, you can have people who have been programmed even before they were born, because you can pass on certain things through your genetics. Genetic memory, we broke that down as well. So you may be dealing with programming that goes beyond this particular incarnation of whoever you're speaking to. It is difficult for you to break. Baba Yan and Nan obviously came with that purpose. And even it has been acknowledged that, well, he's not going to save everyone, is he? And so you're going to go into certain conversations and it's going to be like, no, there is no point to it. So just know that. Don't waste energy. Don't start arguing. Don't get drawn into an argument which lacks purpose. I wouldn't debate if you're someone of a particular race or tribe or nation and you are practicing the religion or culture that belongs to your people, then practice it. All well and good. And there's no need for you to then go over to someone who's a different tribe or race or nation to you, who's practicing their culture or religion. There's no need to then try and convince them to come to your way of life, which, to be fair, the most you find of people doing that is from Christianity, to be honest. Maybe some Islam as well. But the other religions, of which there are many, are generally just chilling. You know, Hindus, I've never seen a Hindu come to me like, let me talk
knock on the door,
talk to you about Krishna.
Read some scriptures.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, you know. So there's a lot of people who are practicing their culture and their religion in peace and just doing what they're doing. But it's the Christians, obviously, that have converted a lot of people, or these free modern day religions who have converted a lot of people modern day by preaching, going back through the years by other methods such as rape and torture and enslavement and so on and so forth. Whereby we have a job to do. So we'll come on our platforms or we'll host our classes and we'll teach in trying to wake up our people, because so many of them have been pulled into the spell of religion. But generally, if you find your way of life, then that's what you should do. You should live your way of life. And there's no point to me going to debate someone who's living their way of life, if that makes sense. So debate would have had its time, like you said, with our people, because so many of our people are lost. So we need to have, or we needed to have, certain debates or certain knowledge or certain classes. But I think nowadays, I think the time for debate is over, to be honest, in general. I'm never going to say it's an absolute, but in general, I think you can still teach, you can still spread knowledge, but most people, from my observations, have decided where they are, and it will take more than my or your or anyone's words to change their mind. They might have to look up into the sky and see something. They might have to see a meteor coming down before they reflect. They might have to see an alien invasion before they're like, oh, where's Jesus? And when Jesus still ain't come back from the corner store, from the corner shop, then you know, okay, yeah, if he ain't saving me from the aliens, he ain't saving me. Which we got to talk about aliens as well, Congress, all of that.
Congress, it was happening.
It was happening. So most occasions, I would say there's no point to religious debate. It doesn't get anywhere in my experience. I've seen a lot of debates. I've been part of a few debates. I've been a part of many more classes where we're just teaching people. And within those classes, we had some incidents. People coming in, false.
We've been screamed at.
Yeah, we screamed at when we drove down to, I'll never forget when we drove down to Nottingham.
It was
it's an event down in Nottingham. We was young as well. Yeah. It was like, we're going to go there and, show our people our original way of life. They're going to love us.
It was just some little...
They're going to love us.
Some teens.
They started screaming at us. I was
Really?
like, huh? We're just babies. You can't scream at children. They were screaming. I was like, no, we are not here to hear this.
One guy seemed like he wanted to fight.
Yeah, he was trying to fight. He was looking at me. I was looking at me like, yo, bro, I'm a teenager. I don't know how old I was. I'm probably young 20. I can't remember how long ago it was. But I was looking at him like, yo, because we had the triad. So me, Red, two Sheps, our brother. You had the quantity. Certainly, you guys were young.
Yeah, we were we were
Very
in
young.
our teens. So
Yeah. So I was looking at him like, bro, are you going
You're going to fight children?
You're going to fight children? Is this getting physical? Is this what's happening right now? But he was not pleased. He was not best pleased. And so, yeah, we've had many different experiences in trying to spread our culture, and you learn different classes along the way. You know what arenas are gonna, it's not even what arenas to go into or not go into. It's just because equipped with the doctrine that we have, one thing I would say is that we can go into any arena. Baba Yanun he's turned over every stone. Within his books, there isn't a piece of knowledge that you require that isn't there if you want to go into all these different arenas. And that's part of the reason why he raised us through these schools of religion. It was like, well, if you need to go into these arenas to save our people, if you need to talk to a Christian, if you need to talk to a Muslim, and so on and so forth, I'm going to equip you with the relevant knowledge to do so. So we can go into any arena, but sometimes it's like you have to step back and say, well, what's the point? Is there any point to me going into this arena? I'm not going to save anyone. They're not trying to hear what I've got to say. And that could be for an individual or group. You have to weigh it up. But what I would say is, whilst there is still plenty of room for classes, discussions and conversations, and plenty of room for us to dive into the sciences of the universe and multiverse and so on and so forth, there is little room for the types of debates that have taken up a lot of our time, whether it's religion or conscious. There's little room for them, and most of them are not designed to save anyone. They're just designed to create content, basically, and attract attention, attract eyes. Which I always want to emphasize, it's not a crime to want to attract eyes, but the way that they go about it, where it's ultimately leading nowhere. And which is why, you were talking to me the other day about having that whole discussion about consciousness versus culture. A lot of these people who are conscious aren't leading you anywhere. Baba Yanun has a culture, so obviously we get onto that. But yeah, I would say overall, to answer the question, I don't know how long it's been. 40, 50 minutes.
Yeah, I lost count.
To answer the question, most of the time, no. I don't think there's any much point to it. And I would much rather, honestly, as someone who studied a lot and taught different classes, I would much rather talk about other things. Sometimes the conversations can be entertaining or fun in some type of way, but there's so many other things to talk about that aren't religion. We have the situation where the US government are like, yeah, so there might be aliens. And we need to talk about that, because what they're saying isn't even, nothing.
It's not even touching the surface.
It's not touching the surface of scraping the surface of what is actually going on. So we need to go into that. We need to go into the creation of the universe, the sciences, the atoms, so on and so forth, particles beneath that. We need to go into that. Who our overseers actually are, the science of actually seeding a people and creating a people who are, we need to go into other things. So religion, given the fact that it is only 8,000 years old, the three main religions that we're talking about, we need to kind of move on from it, to be honest. But always happy to talk about it if it comes up. But there are other things that are worth talking about. And unfortunately, the reality is we still do have to talk about religion, because so many of our people are in it. But I would much rather be talking about other things. So as religious debates, no, not much point to it other than entertainment. Sometimes it's funny. That's what I would say. That's what I would say.
Pretty much. That sums that up.
I suppose it does. Suppose it does. I'm still fuming in my head. She agreed with everything I had to say.
Go let that go.
And then the Holy Spirit. I'm trying. Okay, I'm cool.
That Holy Spirit stuff's wild. Yeah, okay.
It is.
Okay, before we round off this episode, let's get into some What's News with Nefrutat.
Let's do it.
Yep. We have to talk about what's going on in Niger. We haven't covered that yet.
Right.
We haven't covered that yet.
I'm going to let you get into it. I'm going to let you do your thing.
Yeah, we'll go through all the points. So, 26th of July, Niger had themselves a coup d'etat.
We like that.
Yes. The president at that time, Mohamed Bazoum, he was just chilling,
Right.
None the wiser.
Uh-huh.
With my guard.
Right. Running the country.
Yeah. And suddenly they was like, get in the basement. We're taking this over.
Yeah.
We're sick of it. And that was that.
Life just changed for him.
That was that. Something to note is the former president, Mohamed Bazoum, is ethnically Arab, which represents 1.2% of the population of Niger.
Right.
So when you're talking about a country like that, the majority are Hausa, which is you're Africans.
Yeah, as African as African.
Yeah, they look as African as African can get.
Yeah.
So it's just something to go towards. The president in place at that time didn't represent the heritage of the people. The people probably didn't feel represented. So Niger is a former French colony, and we see that have its effects today, because the French still have an interest within Niger.
Of course.
They still have their finger in Niger's jar, for lack of a better term. So what we see a lot of these African countries dealing with is puppet politicians. Politicians they feel just are put in place as a face for the West, but are not really doing anything to make changes for the country. Absolutely. Meanwhile, around the same time, through the 27th to the 28th of July, was the Russia-Africa Summit, in which the president of Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré, made a speech which was circulating a lot. So many would have seen that speech. He said some pertinent things. I think a couple quotes that stood out. He was quoted as saying, "My generation does not understand this. How can Africa, which has so much wealth, become the poorest continent in the world today? And why African leaders traveled the world to beg?" He also said, "A slave who cannot assume his own revolt does not deserve to be pitied. We do not feel sorry for ourselves. We do not ask anyone to feel sorry for us." He called on Africans to take up the fight against imperialism and poverty. So Traoré has been likened to the great Thomas Sankara, who was a former great president of Burkina Faso, and he had certain ideologies that sort of line up. One of his famous quotes was, "He who feeds you controls you."
Right.
So he was very much about getting the country self-sufficient, growing their own food and, sort of building the economy.
Right.
Another thing is he was about putting women in powerful positions, and that was sort of ahead of its time in that thinking.
Very much so. Very much ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
So I encourage anyone to research him as well. Just a little thing on the side. Meanwhile, we have Putin there like, hey.
Putin was like, my brothers.
Yeah, my people.
My people. He was holding up the... No, I'm joking. But he was stood right there like, this is where it is.
How could they?
The West.
It's us.
It's us together in this. We're in the trenches. Don't worry. We got each other's back. I was looking at Putin like, oh, Putin?
So he was even at that summit shaking hands, and then in general, we see him building allies. He's gifted certain West African countries grains, vowed to teach African languages in Russian schools. Right. He's like, we in this.
Yeah. I mean, obviously Putin's he's gathering his allies for what's to come.
Which, we're about to get into the reasons for war. I know we got to get Rechu and Reye to come.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely got to go all the way into that. But that Putin stuff. Because when I saw the clip, I didn't know what was happening. I think the clip just came up on my screen, and it just moved from Burkina Faso, the president, to Putin. I was like, what's going on here?
Putin, didn't he look like he's having the time of his life?
Yeah, he was there smiling like, this is what it's supposed to be. I was like, all right. We gotta get into that.
Yeah, we definitely do. So just to round off the latest on the coup. So the coup that took place on the 26th of July is the 7th coup in 3 years to take place in the West and Central Africa area. We then saw that ECOWAS gave a deadline for them to reinstate Bazoum as president.
To reinstate the Arab dude, yeah?
Yeah. They were ECOWAS. Like, put him back.
ECOWAS, okay.
ECOWAS.
Okay, ECOWAS. Traitors. No, I'm joking.
The deadline came and went, because they was like, reinstate him or you'll see.
Right.
And then the deadline came and went, so they're still in talks. They're being backed by Nigeria.
So Nigeria are back in
ECOWAS.
ECOWAS, okay.
Yeah, which we're going to get onto. But there was threat of invasion by ECOWAS if they didn't reinstate Bazoum. So then Mali and Burkina Faso were like, well, if that happens, we're going to come and fight alongside our brothers and sisters in Niger. We're not going to stand for that. Because I should note that the president of Burkina Faso, Traoré, became so through a coup as well.
Right.
So it's a few different countries that are like, we're taking back our
It's
country.
a theme, right? It's a theme of the times, right? People just like, nah.
No, we're not having it anymore.
Not having it anymore.
So it was good to see that unity. They're like, we're going to come. We're not going to let you bully them.
Mm-hmm.
Might see some Black Americans roll through as well.
Right.
With their chairs. And
if you throw out the hat. If you throw out the hat, they'll be there. There's no doubt about it. They'll be there.
The black signal.
Black
so
signal.
everyone rolling through for Niger.
Yeah. Don't matter if there's an ocean between. They'll swim. We know that. So yeah. Some unity is good to see though. On a serious note, it's good to see some unity between the West African countries. Even when I'm gonna let you talk.
Yeah, because So also we're seeing ECOWAS impose sanctions on Niger, and the Western countries cut aid. And Nigeria have cut power to Niger is the most recent thing I've been seeing. So Nigerians, I mean, I love Afrobeats, but you've got to take some L's sometimes in the way you be turning on your people.
What are you doing? I got a couple Nigerian friends as well. I'm about to address them.
Yeah, it's your fault.
Like, talk to your people. Explain. What's going on? What are you doing? But the lines are being drawn, right?
Yeah.
And it's not going to be as simple as we said this on the Let's Get Racial episode. It's not going to be as simple as those who look like you being on your side. There's going to be some people opposite you that you'd be surprised by, and some people alongside you that you'd be surprised by. That's how it's all going to play out. So, yeah, Nigeria, man. Come on.
Mm-hmm.
Come on. But yeah, go ahead.
So the current head of state or president of Niger was quoted as saying these sanctions are illegal and inhumane because it's affecting people's day-to-day lives in an already very poor country.
Of course. Outrageously inhumane, but that's what they do.
But also the African Union suspended Niger, but Niger is not backing down, so
standing their ground, right?
Standing their ground.
Okay.
And even maybe saw something that they're bringing charging Bazoum with like high treason and stuff like that.
Okay, so they're actually charging him with crimes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, what we're seeing Niger do is attempting to cut ties with the French also and, abolish Western neo-imperialism. That was one quote I saw. Because it's not to ignore the French interest in this as well. Because whenever this stuff like this happens, the sheer Western media gaslighting I see is always perplexing. Well, it's not perplexing to me because we know how they're always going to frame the narrative. Like all of a sudden it's against democracy.
Right.
It's against democracy when people try to stand up for their countries.
Of course.
When they want to stage coups to remove African leaders that don't serve their best interests, suddenly that's the path of righteousness.
Right. Yeah. The West are very arrogant and tell a lot of lies and paint a lot of incorrect pictures. And that's just what they do. And
that's just what they do.
They throw around that word democracy whenever it suits them.
Yeah.
Whenever things aren't going their way, democracy is being threatened here. The democracy is being threatened. We have to do something. That's as soon as it suits them. So, yeah. Don't believe the Western media.
Yeah, exactly that. And lost my truth. So, getting back to the French interest. No, I remember what I was going to say. So, I think it's important in this day and time, as an African, anyone of African descent, if you're still falling for the Western portrayal and the Western narrative, you really got to take a look in the mirror.
Yeah. Reflect.
Because, you got to reflect, fully reflect.
Yeah, we've been knowing they've been lying.
We've been knowing their past, what they've done to these Africa period. So to them by that. So what is the French interest in Niger? Mainly it's to do with uranium.
All right, of course, resources, of course.
Of course, it's always Africa's rich in resources. So a lot of French's energy, the country is powered by nuclear energy. 70% of its energy is nuclear. So they power this through uranium. So 15 to 18% of their uranium comes from Niger. And Niger supplies 25% of the uranium in the EU period.
All right.
So...
We're such a poor country to be supplying 25% of the EU period, but it's a poor country. Just goes to show you the exploitation. Well, Sorry.
Exactly.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
So the biggest mining site in Niger is majority French owned. A company called Somair, I believe, which is owned by a French company called Orano. So people can search that. And so they have big interest in that sense. So shutting down that mine would not be good for them.
No, it would
so
not be.
French are talking, democracy.
Yeah. It's all about resources and control.
Yeah.
It's all about resources and control. That's all it's about. To make a point, if I can make a quick point.
You absolutely can.
I mean, it just goes to show, because I was having this discussion the other day, the idea that Africans and Europeans can live in harmony equally on equal footing. And people are claiming that this idea can be a reality, but it cannot be because of the mentality of the European. The European will not tolerate not being in control. And if you're dealing with all things fair, if the resources are in Africa, then Africans should control those resources. And there shouldn't be a African country supplying that level of resource that is poor. That doesn't make any sense. So, but Europeans will be unwilling to accept a lack of control. So if they don't control it, if they're not exploiting, if they're not raping the continent, they're not going to tolerate that. And that's the bottom line. We can go into the different examples of how that's come to manifest, but that's the reality. So when people say, no, we can live in equal terms, you can't, because the mentality doesn't allow it, if that makes sense. And you can talk about, it's just the French government. You think we're going to see the French people marching for Niger? Like, no. Leave them alone. Let them manage their country. Let it be fair. Let them have access to their own resources and decide how and where it's distributed, and trade deals be fair, and so on and so forth. So it's just like, you can't live equally with someone who doesn't want to live equally, and at the end of the day sees themselves as above you. So just make that point. Exactly
that. So, I mean, I just end it out in saying this is a very positive thing to see West African countries taking back their power. Obviously a very proud thing, being a West African heritage.
Yeah, part of our heritage.
Yeah. But I think, what we're going to see is these countries start to take their power back, and then they can use their resources to, negotiate better deals, build up their economic status, and, back their currencies. I was having a talk with one of my sisters about that, just building up the African currency, because the resources are definitely there for it to have value.
Of course there is. That's where the resources are.
Africa has a bright future.
And it does have a bright future, and the West is falling. It's just really how many they're going to take with them on their way down. And talking of currency, the US dollar's value is just going down every time I look at it. So, and you have countries now coming together to say, we're going to trade in currencies separate to the US dollar. So the West is falling. If you pay attention to currencies, if you pay attention to politics, if you pay attention to war or so-called conflict, you'll see the West is falling. It's falling or fallen, whichever way you look at it. And it's, at this point, it's just who they're going to take with them. Just who they're going to
pretty much that. Yeah. So that's my bullet points on that.
Kapow, got him.
Checking back with Niger soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that.
Yeah, and next we have to cover Congress.
We have to cover whole meeting about aliens. US government was like, yeah, they exist. Yeah. Sorry, what'd you say? They exist.
We didn't hear you.
They kind of exist. So we definitely got to cover that. A whole thing happened, and I think people who've been following it will know, but a meeting of that level at Congress on that topic, I don't think has happened before.
Not that I've ever seen.
We got to dive into that, but
got to dive into that.
The Niger stuff, very interesting. Very interesting.
So, I'm wrapping up that episode there. I quite enjoyed that talk, actually.
It was a good talk. It was a good discussion. I kind of went on one. So you was like, is there a point to religious debate? And I went all kinds of places.
But we covered some stuff.
Yeah, we did.
Covered some stuff. So once again, I'd like to thank everyone for listening. All our socials will be in the description of wherever you're listening to this. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll catch you all next time.
Catch you next time.
But for now, farewell. Wadu.
Farewell.